So I have been looking into Richard III, and particularly how he was found in a car park. Now this was a person who had so much. He was a king of a great realm. He had an army, a kingdom, and even in battle, even though he had a larger number of men than his enemy, he was slain. But he was more than killed. He was humiliated. His body was violated. He was strung up, dragged through the streets, and then he was casually thrown in a ditch of some church. And even if it was a church, he was given no coffin. He was not even laid in the ground with respect, little more than tossed in and left to rot for centuries. And his image after wasn't done any better. But it's uncanny how his position could so easily change. Literally one day he was in charge of a country with access to wealth, men who would bow their heads to him as he passed, and then the next day those same men spat, kicked, stabbed his dead body. Everything changed. He lost it all. And this is a particularly different story when you look at his enemy, or the victor of this battle, King Henry VII, who, from his perspective, this was a heroic, brave battle. He had everything to win. He was a victor, and he won massively. He won a kingdom and founded a new dynasty. This is all interesting because, you have to ask, was Richard III cursed? Was he really unlucky? Or was he cursed? Cursed for potentially usurping the throne from his young nephew and rightful heir, Edward V. Richard was supposed to be the boy's protector, serving as Lord Protector of the realm until the boy came of age. But that never happened. The boy, along with his brother, were lost and presumed dead. And Richard crowned in their absence, even if they were made illegitimate beforehand. But their fates remain a mystery to this day, and it's widely thought that Richard himself was responsible. And as a result, the boys themselves, one of them, briefly King of England, had a similar fate to Richard III. They were left in a grave, presumably, where no one knows where they are, even today. And it's somewhat uncanny how this reflects Richard's fate. Was there some sort of divine punishment? Was Richard cursed for his actions? Well, of course not, but maybe. Right? Maybe not so crazy. What about curses in general? And what about the curse of the pharaohs? Because it got me interested in this. If we look in a completely different part of the world, there have been curses in this respect with the pharaohs. And famous Egyptologist Zahir Was told stories of potential, how he might have been potentially cursed. He was haunted in his dreams, and perhaps this was the curse of the pharaoh that had caused many, or that was said to have caused deaths by people who looked through their tombs of the great pharaohs. And this is most like a coincidence of this person's dreams, but it doesn't mean there's anything true of it, right? Was the torment of his dreams a reflection of the guilt he felt from disturbing the dead? Is it right to open up the tombs of dead Egyptian pharaohs, or any dead people for that matter? It would certainly be wrong to rob a grave of valuables of someone who died in our lifetime. Does the fact that these pharaohs died 4,000 years ago really make this any different? And what about if it's for history? There's much that can be learned about these people, right? How they were buried, when they were buried, who they were. We are so fascinated by this. There's so much to learn. But does that really justify it? Despite the millennia separating us from them, they were people like us, after all, right? They had wants, desires, many of them the same fears, shared many of the same emotions. It's all too easy to associate them with another period of time so different to our own that we can forget that they too are human. And perhaps going through their burial chambers, even out of genuine desires to learn about these fascinating people, is not the right thing to do. I'm not arguing this point, but it's interesting to consider. One thing we know for certain about the ancient Egyptians is that they were very concerned about the afterlife. Their tombs and the processes of mummification only affirm this. would they have wanted their mummies to be disturbed 3, 4, 5,000 years later? Probably not, especially if they went to all this effort. But that got me thinking, what of Richard III? What of this man? Would he have wanted to be found? After all, he was thrown in the ditch and left to be forgotten, not even given a proper burial. Certainly not a burial fitting for a king of a great kingdom like England. Even if it was a church, it was no grand cathedral, and his precise place of burial was lost for over 500 years before it was finally found. I think it's probable that the Egyptians would have preferred to be left to time. But Richard? Perhaps not. Perhaps he would have wanted to be found. His brother, for example, Edward IV, was buried at Windsor Castle, buried with great respect and ceremony. But Richard was afforded none of that. Perhaps there's something to think about. Should the dead be disturbed? And in Richard's place, would you have liked to be found? And how does this compare with the pharaohs? Would they have been wanting to be found, or would they have preferred to be left to time?